Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
So, let me tell you a little bit about my friend Patricia. Patricia is the co-director of the Khemit School of Ancient Mysteries. She is a speaker, a researcher, an explorer, a symbologist, a spiritual and intuitive life counselor, and an artist. Patricia has worked as an architectural artist for several years. She learned much about the energetic nature of structure, color theory, and how we experience the world around us through our visual senses. She explored the physics of color further, as well as the principles of digital technology when she worked as a color specialist and senior account manager, marketing digital copiers, printers, and software. All of this incredible preparation for the level of research that she is currently undertaking, the Netters, mythology, and symbolism of ancient Khemit all combined to give us a brilliant vision and understanding of the nature of our reality and how we eternally cycle through dimensions and stages of consciousness. So without further ado, let me welcome my friend Patricia Awyan to the show. Welcome, Patricia. It's great to see your face. How are you today?
It's lovely to be here. Thanks, Bernard. Always happy to be here.
So, Patricia, you're not in Cairo. You're in the States?
I am in Pennsylvania visiting my sister.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And how are you and your husband and Stephen, and how's everybody at the Khemit School doing?
Oh, everything's been great. Actually, new exciting things are happening. We're planning lots of future events. You have to visit our website and catch it all, but we're working with a new tour facilitator. Lots of new things happening.
That's great. And Patricia, when we spoke about talking and preparing the show, we were talking a little bit about Serpent Power, the electromagnetic waveform. So why don't we start off by defining what is Serpent Power? What do you mean by Serpent Power?
Serpent Power. Well, all the indigenous worldwide talk about this cosmic serpent, the rainbow serpent. We have depictions of it literally worldwide. Sometimes it's a dragon. Most often we look at it as this serpent, but we're talking about a sine wave or a sun wave. We're talking about frequency itself, which is the foundation of how we experience this reality. And so it's really quite amazing because Serpent Power itself is explaining the physics of life itself, because as the sine wave moves, it has a pulse, it has a life force. And the measure of time and space itself begins with this sine wave, this serpent. So it's defining literally the beginning and the end of time, its creation, it's the dance and the rhythm of life, and its pulse being the heartbeat or the life force. So, it's no surprise that the ancients worldwide used the serpent as the symbol to map out their definition of the nature of reality in any given cycle or time frame.
I can't help but but acknowledge the fact that in so many modern cultures, the serpent has always been seen as something very wicked, very evil. It tricked Eve in the Garden of Eden and whatnot. But yet in so many indigenous cultures, it is considered, wisdom or the renewal of life and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about how that changed, or what is the meaning of the serpent in symbology?
Well, what it speaks to, and you spoke about the serpent and the apple, and you have Adam and Eve. Even you're looking at the atom. You're looking at, again, the sine wave itself as the serpent, and the sine wave goes up. These are cycles, and it goes down. So you have this knowledge of good and evil. The kingdom being that height of the cycle as the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of earth, or the kingdom of what we've now been given this title of hell. But you're really looking at this ups and downs, the cycles of how we experience reality. And this is cycles within cycles within cycles. People that are familiar with biorhythms, we're told we have a mental cycle and an emotional cycle and a spiritual cycle. These are cycles, people look at, just the cycling of the day, day and night. We have, day and night, and then we have the year, the seasons that give us, summer and winter. And then the great year also expresses in cycles. And this is what we're speaking of. And we can perceive something like being in the darkness, the seed that's planted in the earth. We can perceive that as not being good. And so we give it an expression of evil. But in reality, that's our definition based on a set of core beliefs. And, in my opinion, being that seed is experiencing. It's experiencing a different part of the cycle. The cycle of being in the earth and striving to find the light of day. And again, these are expressions that were used in the mythologies to define what it is we experience within the cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, it reminds me of what we spoke of a little bit earlier, we talked about on Facebook, was the cycling of consciousness. Is that kind of where it falls into play with you as well? That our consciousness is constantly, I don't want to say evolving, but it flows, it ebbs and flows. The way that the seasons do, the way that the ages of humanity rise and fall and whatnot. There's always some type of it's circular versus linear, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What could you say about the cycling of consciousness?
Well, you're absolutely right. Nothing in reality is linear. Is always linear. We have a perception of linearity. And I think this is really the key for most people in understanding reality and consciousness itself, is we're looking at it from our own 3D perspective and jumping out of that box to see things from different viewpoints. This is the whole idea. When we're looking at everything that exists outside of ourselves, we're even perceiving it upside down. If you understand even the biology, the physics of your eyes and how they work, you're looking at the world upside down, and then the color you see, if you're looking at red, you're actually seeing the reflection of light on green. It's opposite color. Yeah. So we're even looking at the world upside down. And this is why I always encourage people, jump out of the box and start walking around things, fly over it, get under it, look at it from different perspectives, because the light shining on an object will give you a different impression of what it is. And that's true alchemy. Alchemy is walking around something, seeing it from every degree of the globe that surrounds it. It's like getting every idea, perception of it in order to understand the whole. And this is what we're talking about. To really understand that time and space are illusions is to understand how the cycles of consciousness work and how our perception of time and space changes depending on where we're at in the cycle. And you know that the indigenous worldwide all have different ways of expressing it, but they all talked about ages and stages of consciousness. And when we look at it, we can define it from an outside map. We look at the stars, as above, so below. And so we map ourselves out as the sun moving around the ecliptic, the 12 zodiac signs. And right now we say we're leaving the age of Pisces and moving into Aquarius. So we're using these tools that are really symbolic. They're symbolic messages for telling us where we're at in any given cycle. And I like to look at, we talk about years, but how can we define all of history in a perception of a space of time that we're defining in one stage of consciousness? Because if consciousness does change our perception of time and space, then our experience of it would also change. And it really becomes a challenge, and yet it becomes very exciting when you realize we're only in one stage now, and that will change. And what we have to expect is going to be even that much more exciting, because we're in a stage of the cycle, if you understand what the indigenous are telling us, where we have been contained. We have been contained in an expression of self where we really feel confined. We're contained by our core beliefs, limited. We believe in limitation. But what if we're moving into a time and space where we are released from those limitations, and the sky, there is no limit to what we can do or how we can express ourselves? That makes everything a whole lot more exciting, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's funny that just recently, I think during this last full moon, I had that kind of like that push, like my inner guidance system was telling me it's time for us to move into that and to acknowledge that we are these limitless, divine beings, and that there is just so much more available to us that we're just not really paying attention to. And it was just very interesting because the full moon work I did the other night was just about that, moving into that timelessness, that limitlessness, if that's a word.
I love it. That's perfect.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your work in Egypt. You're married to Yosef Awyan, which is the son of Hakim, and I'm guessing you guys are kind of carrying on his work through you, your husband, and Stephen Mailer, and several other people working in the Khemit school of ancient mysticism. What do you think is the most important thing that ancient Khemit teaches us into the nature of human reality?
Well, some of what we just talked about, Hakim laid out what the ancient Egyptians, the Khemitians, as he would have coined, the phrase, how they understood reality as consciousness moving through cycles. And so that is the foundation, and that's a concept that one needs to really wrap their mind around, their mind and heart around, to totally understand how it is we experience reality. That foundation is huge, and he of course provided that for us, which is, and then just taking that and running with it, and that's exactly what Yosef and I are doing in different ways.
Thank you. Now, Patricia, last time you were on the show, we spent time talking about the netters, and I just love the way that you express it, because to many people there seems to be confusion as to, are they entities, are they beings, are they streams of consciousness, are they just representations of nature? What role do they play in our lives? What are the netters?
Well, they're all of the above, actually, strangely.
Okay.
If you can get an understanding of the netters as being created with that first breath from source, from the primordial egg, the primordial waters of nothing, right? And this egg, this null and void sea of primordial waters, due to its innate polarity, duality, begins to vibrate. And so it vibrates, and you hear the first thunder sound, right? And lightning, okay, sound and light, the sound and light show. That creates that first breath, which is that sine wave, okay, frequency. That's life. And that's how, again, we measure time and space. So that first breath is the breath that creates all of the expressions of the divine oneness, that unified source. At the heart, that's our heart. That's the holy of holies. That secret space that explodes into separated aspects of itself. That's consciousness experiencing itself from a heartfelt. It's creation, created by this divine imagination that just explodes. You could call it the Big Bang, into all these aspects of itself, individuated aspects, archetypes, breath, tones, frequencies, musical. It's everything that we experience outside ourselves as self, because the outside is our mirror to what is actually occurring in the heart. So that's how life actually occurs, as all of these frequencies. So the netters, this pantheon of gods and goddesses, are basically, and their angles are angels of light, and they have different, as I said, different tones and different frequencies. So you have your archangels or angels, which are your the ones we can more readily understand. You have Archangel Michael, the blue ray. So again, they're colors, musical notes, tones. They are giving us a map of the nature of this reality if we understand what it is they're showing us. They are the stars. They're how the stars move. Time is the measure of movement. And we see the netters, our gods and goddesses are moving outside ourselves, in the heavens, in the mirror. And we look at them and we define even our own time, how we move through time and space, through this movement of these natural forces of nature. And then when you realize it's just a mirror for what's occurring within, you begin to understand more how time and space can be illusions. The Hindus called it Maya, and Maya is the term for water in Egypt. And we have the Mayan, culture in South America, and you can see that these terms, these sounds, these tones are all expressing the same thing, and that is our world is a watery illusion. It's and this illusion is giving us an idea. It's how we express. It's how we experience reality. We all chose to be here. This is a game. It's a dance.
Yes.
And we all, I just want to get up and dance. You want to enjoy every breath, every moment, every experience. We choose how we express. We choose how we spin. That electromagnetic spin. We always choose what happens next, dependent on our own core beliefs and where we place our focus. Our own imagination creates, our past, present, and future. How we perceive it.
Absolutely. And you made a wonderful point, because it made me realize the way that you're explaining the netters and all that they represent, I don't want to say the importance, but how integral the idea of symbolism is, and our understanding of symbolism, and the layers upon layers and upon layers that are within all of these, the symbolic forms that you just described as the netters. Can you relate to us a little bit how important symbolism was to the ancient Khemitic people, and or how important it is for our spiritual evolution?
Well, it was everything to them at a certain specific point in time, strangely enough. If you consider there was a time when we experienced I call it an even breath. We have even and odd. So an even breath where everything was, we talk about being patriarchal in a patriarchal paradigm. Well, I believe there was once, of course, a matriarchal. We always have two sides. It's the polarity, and we live both. This is the yin-yang. So right now we're living one expression, but we have lived and we will live the other. And when we're in that even breath, I don't believe we need symbols to understand. We become the waveform rather than contained by it, if that makes sense. And so we don't need words and symbols. But in this expression, this is how, the words and the symbols is the mind through which we perceive what it is we're experiencing. And so these symbols, as first breathed out or expressed, Hakim called the hieroglyphics, the symbols, the tones. This was the language of the Suf. Suf, of course, is the wisdom. It's the Sophia. It's Isis. It's literally the knowing of gnosis, and it's expressed then in symbolism to give us a key, a map for how to navigate the patterns, the frequencies, in order to understand what it is we're experiencing. I always say we're the ones that provided this map, and then we separate out into these aspects, and we become the players of this game. And the whole key is to involve compassion, bring back evolve back to source by navigating the tools that we provided. Again, it's a game, it's a dance of life. And if we start to understand what it is that's in front of us, around us, it's bringing all those different perspectives back. This is alchemy, as I said earlier. You bring all those different understandings of this experience back, involve instead of evolve, and you get back to the heart or back to the center. And this is the great breath of life.
I love it, and you keep talking about the I guess the sacred dance, and we had mentioned you had mentioned something about the dance of the Shiva, and a lot of people may not understand what that means. What is the dance of Shiva?
Well, Shiva is well known in India. It's a great Hindu god, and he is expressed as dancing. He has one leg up, and he is understood as the creation, that breath, but also the sustaining through dance, and then it's that ending, the destruction. And this is the eternal dance of life, and it's the waveform. And the waveform, I talked about sine wave, the serpent, but it curves. So even the sine wave itself spirals, and how we exist, and after I started working on this, I discovered Walter Russell's work, and he talks about this in such beautiful, eloquent ways. But we exist as two opposing, spiraling waveforms that are coming out of the source, and it's form and formless. It's positive and negative charge. It's Shiva and Tefnut, the matters. One Tefnut being the life force, and Shu being the form that we experience. And together they're the electromagnetic waveform. They're hydrogen and oxygen. They're it's the basis for how we experience the separation between sky and earth, which indigenous worldwide talk about, the day that the sky and earth separated. And strangely represented as a letter, it's H. H is interesting. It's the symbol for hydrogen, that first atom at the center of the spiraling waveform of elements, because the elements actually come out in Fibonacci spiral based on the magnetic pressure of the element itself. So it's so divine in its perfection how everything works in these spins. It's current. The serpent power, it's currency, and that's what we call money. That's the most precious. You think about it, just the way we speak, the words are containers for the truth. Magic, magnetics, magi, or the ones who understood how to harness the magnetic currency. And they were the magicians, the high priests, because they understood, they could navigate the currents.
I love what you said about, just about the words. I mean, I really am a big, how shall I say, I really try to incorporate the idea of the power and the vibration and in all of our words. And if we really knew how much energy was in every word that we put out, the power of the spoken word, the power of the wavelengths of what we're saying, it's absolutely beautiful. And we can tap into that and direct it to be beneficial for humanity, hopefully. But sometimes
Absolutely.
not so much. Patricia, we're going to be coming up on a commercial break in just a few minutes, and I was wondering if you could share with us what's the next big thing. Do you guys have a tour coming up this summer or this fall, or I think it's a cruise?
Well, yes. Well, first in October, we're working with Nassim Harriman, which we're very excited about. He's doing a seminar and a tour, so we're going to be doing that in October. And then I'll be doing a cruise. It's a Mysteries Revealed cruise. You can find information on our website, but it will be starting from LA and going to many different stops in Mexico. I'll be doing 2 full seminars on the cruise, along with many other speakers I'm really looking forward to hearing. So we have that. And then January, Joseph is hosting and speaking on a budget tour for the more budget conscious. So great time to come if you're counting your pennies. And then in March, we have Brian Forrester and Andrew Collins and Hugh Newman and Joseph and myself doing a blockbuster tour. So, and that's just the beginning.
My goodness, that sounds great. All my favorite people. You've just named all my favorite people. I'm gonna have to have like each and every one of you one a month before all of that. It's been wonderful.
Yes, really.
And so the website is Khemitology.com, correct?
Yes.
And for those of you that don't know how to spell that, how would we spell that, Patricia?
KHEMITOLOGY.com.
KH. Okay, good. Because I always seem to
Yeah,
forget that sometimes.
yeah. Well, there's different ways to spell Khemit. It's just the way that Hakim had done it.
Right. All right, everybody. Well, we're up at a commercial break here. We'll be right back after this break with Patricia. We're going to continue talking about the Serpent Power and how it deals with the buildings and the megaliths and whatnot. We'll be right back after this break.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. So if you are at freedomslips.com, please do make a small donation. Keep all these wonderful programs going on the radio station. We've got 2 channels, Studio A and Studio B. I'm on Studio A today. And we are also simulcasting live on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/justbernard. As well, you can always support my work here on YouTube at patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez. Become a member of my tribe. You'll get all kinds of cool little rewards and gifts, and you can keep this channel doing better and better shows and better projects. So, without further ado, let me welcome back Patricia Awyan, who's joining me live today. Thank you so much for being here with us this hour. And I want to jump right in because I have a very interesting question here, and I'm very curious. What Hakim said, we have 360 senses. What are they? You don't need to name all 360, but what did he mean by that?
It's funny. He did start to name them, and then he stopped and he said, we can't, because names are labels, they're containers, and we limit things by wrapping our, thoughts, our hands, by defining them even, by giving them names. But they literally are, I believe, a metaphor, really, for these netters that I just spoke about. The senses are how we perceive the nature of this reality. And as I just, kind of described, that's exactly, what they're telling us. They're giving us different expressions of how we experience reality. And so in a way, that's what they are. It's hard for us in this limited cycle of consciousness to understand, how we could have more than 5 or 6 senses. But if you think about just, the sixth sense, perception, intuition, but they're senses that animals have. Almost all animals can sense magnetic current, and they do it in different ways. So each one of those different ways, birds migrate according to understanding and navigating the magnetic current. It's all about navigating the current. I do believe there was a time, Hakim said at one time, we all felt and understood and knew how to express with all of these 360 senses. Full circle capability, full cycle capability. So that is that greatest, highest stage of awareness. And so we have 5, but we've only forgotten all of the others. And as we begin to reclaim them, that's like pulling all your aspects back into self. You start to reclaim all these levels of awareness, and you sense things, and you don't even. People feel energy. They feel, you feel that your mother's calling before you pick up the phone or answer the phone, and it's because you're feeling the frequency, and it's different levels of feeling that frequency. And I believe this is what the senses really are. It's just a different level of experiencing reality.
I love that. And I can't help, in my mind, I'm picturing like a 360-degree circle, and we're just moving our perception 1 degree over, throughout our life, and even throughout our day. And that's one of the tools that I offer people when I'm teaching them, is to be aware of how you change your perception just even throughout the day, how your mood changes, how you can look at something in the morning and look at it completely different at night, and how it's constantly fluctuating and depending on what we're looking at and how we're looking at it. It's a beautiful
You
idea
make
to me.
You make a good point. First of all, the degrees. It is the degrees of a circle, but we also earn degrees, don't we? That's how we achieve when we're students, and it is the same thing. And also, if you consider, I liken this to the way the sun, the sun rising on the horizon. It hits at a certain degree, a certain angle, depending on where you're at on this globe that we call Earth, our home, Gaia. It hits a certain angle, and then it moves in a sine wave path around the planet. And each one of those places that it hits is one of those degrees of understanding. It's a ray of light. See, again, expressed as such, it's a ray, a ray of light hitting an object. It's that angel. That is the expression of what you're experiencing in that moment as it moves in its sine wave pattern around the Earth. The sun dancing around the planet. It's just a beautiful thing. And I actually believe at one time that current, that path of the sun was in direct alignment with the path of the magnetic equator. And that's what we veered from. That's what we're out of alignment with. Our spine is off balance now, and therefore we're out of alignment, and we've lost that ability to understand and utilize all these senses that we just spoke about.
Yes, yeah, and distracted from utilizing them as well.
Well, exactly. But that's the dance of life.
Yes.
See, it all comes back to, is that bad? That's the idea that we place on it. We project that feeling, good or bad. But everything is just two sides of the same coin. Is there really a good and bad? No, it's all one breath coming back into center, and it's our perception. I think that's how we get back to center, is by transmuting that feeling that one is better than the other. It's understanding that it's all part of me. It's all part of the whole.
I love that you said that, Patricia, because I'm one of these people that really believe we have to allow ourselves to be fully human, and to try to be this perfect, always positive, always happy. It's not. I don't believe it's in our nature. I believe we have to develop that relationship with the contrast, and let that, and do that dance that you're talking about.
Exactly. You have to experience it to understand it. Shakespeare wrote about this, whoever he was. He wrote about having to understand what it's like to crawl through the pits of hell. If you don't understand it, then you're standing in a glass house somewhere on a hill, looking down and judging. And why would one be better than the other? It is experiencing it. But then you decide, there is a Native American tale where the elder speaks to the child about the good wolf and the bad wolf. And it all comes down to, which one are you going to lead? See, this is what it's understanding they're both me, but which one am I going to place my focus on? Which one am I going to give my attention?
Yes, exactly. And, so going back to the idea of the serpent energy, or these, for lack of a better term, the energetic grid on the planet, can you speak a little bit about the placement, perhaps, of the sacred sites in ancient Egypt, and were they tapping into a specific, what do they call them, dragon lines or ley lines? What did they know about this? Were they drawn to these specific areas?
I believe at one time, absolutely. As I've already mentioned, I believe we could feel the currents. We knew where the strength of certain currents were. When the way water flows, the Nile, was in alignment with the north to south prime meridian. Giza, the prime meridian once ran right through Giza until it moved somehow to Paris, and then it moves to Greenwich, where it is now. But it used to run in the same direction as the Nile River, and of course that is an electromagnetic current. It's running north to south. And then, I've mentioned magnetic equator. In grade school, in high school, in any school, I was never told that we had a magnetic equator. I was only familiar with the geographic equator. And when I started to do this work, and I was studying the Sphinx, and why is the Sphinx where she is? Because I was looking at her from my balcony every day, and I look at this and I think, why is she aligned, in alignment with these pyramids, the pyramidians, and we get to meridians. Meridian, just the term that we use for the Earth grid, mer was a tool that the ancients used to create a path for the water to flow for irrigation, irrigating the seed. And everything in mythology is about the journey of the seed as, placed in the dark earth and striving for the light of dawn. And so this tool, that it's shaped like an A, no less, is the tool is known as the mer. It is the word we use for meridian, but it also is known to be the beloved, Mary. It becomes the term for Mary. The Mary in ancient times was the feminine, the female elder of the tribe who understood the wisdom. She knew about the herbs. She knew about the secret. The mayor was the one who gave the information to the tribe that everybody went to for wisdom. So the Mary, in different places in the world, the mare is the sea, it's the water, it's maritime, it's Mars. It's, to understand, look at our work. So meridian, Mary, becomes that line. So our song lines, Mary lines, Merry Christmas. See where I'm going with this?
Yes.
It's Mary Magdalene, magnetic line, the path of the Mary Magdalene. We're following these paths. We're navigating these currents. Well, the ancient magnetic equator, I believe, and others have done work on this, ran, right through the Giza pyramids, and it ran all the way across the globe. It went through the Nazca lines. It went through Easter Island. It went through Petra. It went through Cambodia, Angkor Wat. All the way around the globe, and this was right in the center of the planet, okay, and a time of even flow. And that magnetic equator would have been the place where the magnetics are the least. It's the separation between the true northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. So it's the separation between the two opposing spins. So if you place your structures and you understand how to harness and utilize these spins, these currents, and there's not just 2, there's 4, there's 8. You harness these spins, what are you creating? But possibly something similar to Tesla towers, something that was able to create an atmosphere. Now, people say free power. I say an atmosphere that is nurturing body, mind, and spirit. It's an electromagnetic 0 point. The place of the least charge. Because as you move toward the poles of the planet, the North Pole and the South Pole, these are the strongest magnets. This is where we have you hear about the Alaska anomalies, you hear about the South Pole, and these are places where the magnetics are crazy. But the closer you move toward the equator, it's at its weakest point. Harness those currents and you have 0 point. And we've all heard about what that energy can do for us. So you see, and if you're able to develop or create a system, a series of structures along this line that are also in alignment, I keep saying alignment because the Phi lines, Phi, all right, Fe is our term for iron, our symbolic, okay? So we felines, feminine, fertility. This is all relating to the fertility of this is the line of fertility. But these lines of fertility, these are places where you plant. These are places, there's a whole mapping of how this works. This is what they're navigating. They're navigating the fertility of the planet, harnessing these currents, and they're not, east to west, I believe, is the most powerful. This is the magnetic equator. But where the nodal points are, where the north to south lines cross, These are the points where you can create the strongest electromagnetic field, 0-point fields. And you create a series of what I would call Tesla towers, basically. And you're creating possibly this force field of energy around the planet. All right. I'm not saying this is, I'm saying this is a possibility because I get to deal in possibilities.
Yeah.
and I like to put this out there because it gives us an idea of what they were doing. These song lines. We hear that the original people of Australia and New Zealand and some of the Pacific Islands were traveling the song lines. That means a place where you can leave the physical and dance through. You navigate the current. You become the current. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
It literally understanding the structure of the nature of this reality as current. You're harnessing the current. This is what Horus was able to do. He holds the serpents. He holds the scorpions. He stands on the crocodile, and he harnesses. He transmutes the polarity in order to rise up, and he becomes this entity that was called Nebuchadnezzar. He was the great unified one. So again, we're talking about a way to exist in peace and harmony, even current.
Oh, if only we could have people take the time to build these structures now.
Well, it's funny.
Of the earth.
Well, exactly. And Tesla understood it. Tesla saw this. He understood it. And I believe he understood how to make it work. And they stopped him, people say because, they wanted to put a price tag on power, but maybe it's much deeper than that. It could have been because this raises consciousness. This enables us all to reclaim our inner power, and to live in peace. And I'm not going to explain why that's beneficial or not, depending on who you are. However, when he suddenly disappears and they say, oh, well, we'll try and do this. They don't look at where they place these extra Tesla towers. They put them anywhere and they say, no, it doesn't work. They have to be too close together. But it's the placement, and that's getting back to your question. Where do you put these structures? That you put them on these nodal points. And I believe that's what the ancients did. They understood. And that's why these sites were and are still powerful today, but were certainly super powerful back then. We can awaken some of these currents of energy through tone, sound, in specific places. But when they're operating at optimum, I can't even imagine, because what we experience, when we go to these places and we work with sound and resonance, and we're able to experience amazing, I've seen spontaneous healing and people that change from one mood to another, and it's always euphoria, within just these small experiments and experiences of it. Can you imagine living in this energy? It would have been phenomenal.
I can't help but think, you're talking about how Tesla, they stopped him, and I always say, and it reminds me of how we've talked about in the past about the dark priest, for lack of a better term. I forgot the Hanut. I always say the greatest conspiracy. Everyone's talking about conspiracies, and I'm like, the ultimate conspiracy is the suppression of human consciousness, and how these quote unquote Hanut or the elite or whatever we want to call them have gone out of their way to take this information away from us, and now we're rediscovering it, kind of like the work that you're doing and I'm doing, and we're all tapping back into that. It's just again, that's the ultimate conspiracy to me.
Well, Bernard, I kind of look at it a little differently than some, because we all want to put the blame on this evil elite, and again, I don't believe in the judgment. And I have to speak to people and say, what about the Hanut within? Because this is where it all begins. It's our choice what we believe. This elite, whoever they are, they give us the tools, but do they actually use them? No. We make those decisions. We're the ones that choose to plant with GMO. We're told by the government it's our only choice, but we're the ones that actually say, yes, I'll use that, even though I know it's poison. We've done that. We have to be the ones to stop, to say, no, I'm not going to make choices. I'm not going to feed the dark wolf, I'm going to feed the other wolf, no matter what that means. Because the funny thing is, once you make those positive, heartfelt choices, your world becomes a magical. You become the producer of your own movie. And it is a magical experience. But it's taking that leap of faith and knowing that your heart knows the way. And that to me is that struggle with the inner elite, the inner that voice that's always telling us, oh, do this. It's always been done this way. Well, why not try something new?
I couldn't agree with you more, actually, and I will say it's time for us to take responsibility and not. We can't be blaming the outside. It really is our choice, and you're absolutely right. I always talk about harm reduction. At least work toward harm reduction with your inner dialogue, with your diet, and work toward that the white wolf, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it worked.
Now we're about to run out of time, but I want to get one little last question about the placement of these structures. And it said that the Temple of Hathor at Dendera is said to contain all of the secrets. And what does that mean to you? Is it because of the placement, or what's going on there?
Dendera, as you walk through, you go under this first gate and you look up and you see this beautiful winged scarab, but you look at the underbelly of the scarab. It's really the only place in Egypt that you see the underbelly of the scarab. It's at Dendera. And, Hakeem said this means that you're walking into a space that holds all the secrets. And when you walk into this temple, and the first thing you do in the first temple-style hall and look up, you're looking at the expression of all the cycles I just talked about and all the netters. And these netters are telling us the truth of who we are. And it's just understanding. This is why I do what I do. I look at the ceiling. I just want to get a cot and lay down and just stare at this all day long. But as you begin to understand what's in front of you, you begin to understand that all of these cycles, are telling us how we can actually navigate and change everything in any now moment. And, I always take them around and I show them all the symbols and my best effort at what they mean. And then in the center, you see the netters walking up a stairway right into Hathor's mirror, which is basically the sun. You're walking in the center of this mirror is an eye. And you're walking back into center, into the heart, and realizing that the mirror, there's your mirror again, the beloved mirror is your heart, it's yourself. And everything outside of the mirror is just a map for what you're experiencing within. It's right there on the ceiling. And that's just the first floor. You go upstairs and you go up the stairs that spiral, and you see this whole ceiling that you saw downstairs. You see it in 3 dimensions. It's spiraling, and it has 2 spirals, and it tells you the same story, but it's in a higher dimensional awareness because you've gone up. And then you come down, and the funny on the night side of the structure, the stairs go straight down because you fall back into winter, the night cycle. Even the structure itself is telling you the story of how we experience reality.
Beautiful. And what a beautiful place for us to end. Unfortunately, this hour went by so quickly, as usual.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patricia. It has been such a joy again, and I always learn so much from you, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers do too. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
And Khemitology.com is the website, and you can find me on youtube.com/justbernard or Bernard Alex Alvarez on Facebook. Have a great week, everyone. We love you, and I'll see you next week with Marina Jacoby. Have a great week, everyone.